CNN.com commentary raises a thought-provoking question. Should pedophiles be extended some measure of sympathy? Are we doing enough to identify and help pedophiles before they victimize our children?
Pedophilia is natural and normal, according to an academic presentation last year at the University of Wake Forest, Cambridge.
Is pedophilia a sexual orientation?
Miriam Heine from the University of Würzburg, and she claims that pedophilia is a natural sexual orientation.
Like every other sexual orientation, pedophilia can have different characteristics.
Dr. James Cantor says pedophilia is an inborn condition, not a learned sexual behavior.
Nobody chooses to be attracted to whatever it is that they're attracted to. Nobody chose to be attracted to adults. Nobody chose to be attracted to children.
You either are wired that way or you're not.
That's what all the research seems to show.
And none of this has anything to do, Katie, with the right of an adult man to have sex with little children. What this is about, when you really go around about this, what this is the mainstreaming of sexual capacity for people of all ages.
I'm Desmond. I'm 11 years old, and I like pizza, trains, and drinking root beer since it's caffeine-free. I also do drag, and I love to put on makeup, dresses, and wigs, and of course, jewelry is necessary.
It really touches me deeply that there are other children out there that he's reaching and they're listening to him and he's influencing them to be themselves.
I'm very proud of him.
It's a growing trend to normalize it. It's an attempt to normalize it. We saw this with the APA when they came out with their book, and they ultimately ended up retracting their statement that pedophilia is a sexual orientation. We have groups like NAMBLA, the Man-Boy Love Association, whatever it is, that are trying to normalize it.
What they're doing here is not necessarily trying to argue it's okay for adult men to have sex with little kids. What they're getting around about here is the idea that little children as young as 5 and 6 years old, younger, should be able to have sex with whoever they want. Why are we taking away from 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds their right to sexual control of their own bodies?
The UN CRC committee issued a comment number 15, and it says that children have sexual and reproductive freedom. What does that mean?
And one of the main things that is being pushed, along with just openly socialist and radical feminist ideas that are promoted on the global level through United Nations agencies, is this notion of children's sexual rights.
But there is an attack on the family from multiple UN agencies. The main assault comes through something called Comprehensive Sexuality Education, or CSE.
I'm going to move on to the second possible root cause of the sexualization of children, and that's comprehensive sexuality education. This kind of education has never been completely defined. What is it?
We need look no further than the World Health Organization, which is charged with setting the health standards for the whole world. They have defined sexuality, and this definition is being used by multiple UN agencies. And the World Health Organization says sexuality encompasses gender identities, attitudes, pleasures, desires, fantasies, behaviors, eroticism, roles, relationships, sexual orientation.
The World Health Organization, in addition to apparently, it appears, having some very strong communist ties, they openly advocate for the decriminalization of prostitution. They push a gender theory for kids. The World Health Organization, one of the documents they signed on to, suggests that by age 5, children should be taught about gender incongruence.
The WHO standards for sexuality education, they're starting at age 0, newborns. They need to learn about sexual pleasure and touching body parts and masturbation and gender identity.
But for children ages 0 to 4, they want them to be given information about enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's body or masturbation, given the right to explore their gender identities. Then at age 9, to be given information about pleasure, masturbation, and orgasm. And then they send 9-year-olds to learn about their sexual rights as defined by the International Planned Parenthood Federation, also known as IPPF. And what are they going to learn from IPPF?
International Planned Parenthood Federation, in their publication that was distributed at the UN in New York, they say that young people are entitled to sexual pleasure and how to experience it different forms of sexual pleasure, and they claim that the priorities for this kind of curriculum was established by all these UN agencies, like it's mandated.
The U.S. affiliate of International Planned Parenthood Federation endorses this book. It's called It's Perfectly Normal for 10-year-olds, and it teaches children exactly that it's perfectly normal for children or adults to be engaging in whatever sexual acts they desire.
Again, they must have this sexual education. They need all these health services, reproductive health services, without the permission of a parent, caregiver, or guardian. I would propose that this violates the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It says that parents have the prior right to choose the education.
Like if you knew what was going on in public school every single day, you would say, I don't want to be anywhere near this.
Now, the United Nations Fund for Population and Activity, UNFPA, a quick example from them. They found that it's hard to get around religious leaders and parents, so they've created a phone app that the children can download and the parents will know nothing about it.
In the wake of the Me Too movement, several apps for smartphones have been created that allow you to document consent for sex.
Can you consent for sex using a smartphone? What happens if you change your mind?
The idea here, the creators say, is you're creating a legal binding document of consent and intent. And you are then giving essentially a potential rapist evidence to exonerate themselves later on.
This is how they teach children about consent, and this is one of the most deceptive topics that we come across in fighting bad sex education programs, because most parents hear that and think, oh yeah, we want to teach our children consent so that they're not raped or they're not sexually abused, but this actually teaches children not to refuse sexual behavior, but to consent to sexual behavior and how to negotiate sex acts.
Perhaps people don't realize the severity of it, because of course pedophilia will remain a criminal offense, but not if you roll back the age of consent. I mean, there's one way in which pedophilia could ultimately creep into our society.
International Planned Parenthood Federation is pushing, it has pushed in many areas of the world to lower the age of sexual consent, so that what would be considered rape, the age would be different.
We live in a sick enough society already. If we pass some sort of law that pedophilia is a sexual orientation, we are taking 5,000 steps backwards.
I was going to use an example from Epstein where they talk about decriminalizing and not being able to prosecute certain crimes in certain places, and then you wonder why they travel these exotic destinations with all their friends so they can traffic kids.
As concerning as all these things are that we're talking about, and as alarming as they are, guess what? They're not going to win, because the family is the thing that always rises. A man and a woman who produce life together and love and nurture their child, that's the thing that has always existed, regardless of what other governments have come and gone, and it's the thing that will always exist unless we abandon it. If you corrupt sex, then you corrupt the family. If you convince young people that it's their human right to just have sex just because, then that's a huge win for family destruction. And in tandem with that, the World Health Organization, as I mentioned, is all on board with decriminalizing prostitution. So I realized in the course of study that, and it doesn't take a genius to realize that if you're going to lower the age of sexual consent, and then you're also going to decriminalize prostitution, what are you setting the stage for? You're setting the stage for decriminalized teenage prostitution or child prostitution.